Yes, you're
The
audible. Go ahead.
messages which I can see, the concern is being shared about addition of judgments, and of course, me and my team members are being blamed for that. One, your syllabus is decided by the committee, the examination board of the Supreme Court of India. So I am not here to talk about the number of judgments and the syllabus. I am here to talk about what is already prescribed, and then how to prepare those judgments, and how to present them to secure that it is a better presentation, and what can be considered as the better presentation. That is what I am going to talk. Also, I can see many questions where can we watch old lectures of leading cases. Please do, because as we can see, there were long length of series of lectures on leading judgments by many senior advocates, very well experienced one. And knowledge always helps. As much you listen, as much you watch, it will be definitely helpful, because considering that we have more number of judgments, we may only touch upon those judgments, and what I am going to provide you may complement to that, rather than only repetition of the same thing. Since everyone here is an experienced advocate, practicing in before various forums for 4 years, then 1 year before the Honorable Supreme Court, having undergone training, the presumption is that all these judgments are read by all of you. Why I'm saying this? If you look at the syllabus as I see to it, every judgment has an area of law which is somewhere or other we are required to deal with when we interact with clients in press case, or we require to assist our seniors to prepare the case notes and arguments. Now, after this preliminary thought, which I was just presenting on the basis of what I could read in the comment box, I would like to take up to the lecture which I am supposed to provide on leading cases. You have already been assigned different subjects where you will be dealing with the professional ethics as well as Supreme Court rules, and Supreme Court rules perhaps would already give you idea about the powers of Supreme Court, jurisdictions of Supreme Court under which you practice and you have undergone the training. That's the presumption before even you get your admit card. Now, I would not take much time on explaining that what are the jurisdictional part, but I would definitely touch upon the point that the Supreme Court is a constitutional court where the interpretation of constitution as well as interpretation of various statutes has been taking place. And when you see increase in number of judgment, you also require to see that what has been done in 50s and 60s are definitely landmark, definitely significant for us. But at the same time, we all know the Pond's theory. Law is for society, and for society, when new law comes and the interpretation question arises, then Honorable Supreme Court step in and provide the interpretation which we have to see to it. I would not go the serial wise as the syllabus you have, the list of judgments which I can see that 86. I would not go serial wise, rather I would try to club the judgments as far as the subject area is concerned, because as I said to start with, that it may not be possible for me or anybody, because 86 judgment, even if I give 1 minute time, I cannot explain all judgment. Every judgment deserves 1 hour lecture in fact. So we will just try to touch base that where we start. When we got our constitution and we started having this, we started getting the cases. Now, basic, before I go to 1 to 86, And as I said, I would not go to all in detail. I cannot practically. I would like to discuss how to read any leading judgment when we read that, because certain institutions do have the leading cases as their subject paper in LLB also, and we know how to read those judgments, but not every institution has. So when you see any judgment, what you look for, and this is also very important for the purpose, because in other papers it is a closed book exam, but leading cases are open book exam, where you would be provided with the volumes. Registry would confirm with you where head notes or something, whatever is prescribed by the examination board, that reading material would be provided to you. So while you have everything before you, that's where this paper is different than all your other papers. Other papers may check your memory, but this paper would not check your memory absolutely. This will check how you approach any judgment, how you read, how much you understand, and how could you apply to it. So this would not be like E equal MC square, okay, this is asked and check about your memory and then just reproduce it. No, it would not be, because the reading material would already been provided by the registry on your table. Now, when you read the judgment, what you look for? First thing you should look for, because head notes would be provided, not the complete judgment, I believe. What you look for, that what was that reason why this matter has come, means the context under which any judgment has come. So now what I'm explaining is this will be applicable on your all 86 judgment when you start preparing, because you still have time for your examination and you would be prepared almost. But if you need to refresh the way I'm suggesting you to read, it would be helpful. Look at the context, means the fact is required to be checked. Then identify the legal issues involved in that case. Every leading case means that there is something substantial question of law is decided by the Honorable Supreme Court, whether it is in law or any specific statute which is of public importance that would have come before the Supreme Court for getting decided. Now, when you open, first list out those legal issues which are before Honorable Court in that particular judgment, right? Afterwards, you may, subject to time, look for both sides of arguments, because there is always possibility of interpretation within the statutory interpretation rule, and that's how both sides argue the matter. If you have time, go for arguments. Otherwise, go to the judgment operative part to understand what is the ratio decided by that judgment. When I say go to operative part to understand the judgment, it doesn't mean that you can ignore the minority view if there is any such view in the judgment. You need to go for that minority view to understand, because every opinion expressed in a landmark judgment is definitely based upon some legal view, some legal principle which may or may not find support from the majority view, but it doesn't mean that it is not something you may require to argue in the future. So go for the ratio as well as look for the minority view. Understand what is the significance of that judgment, that whatever view is taken, what is the significance of that, because the issue was before court because of some problem, some issue. Now the outcome, how it would impact the society or legislature or whatever the issue of the concern was over there. That analytical approach is something which is definitely expected at this experience level of litigation practice from all of you, that when you read a judgment, look for what the judgment says on which point of law, but at the same time, if there is a minority view, you might have your own view based upon your analytical approach. Also, think in your mind, if a new fact comes, how are you going to apply this principle of law that fact. Why I'm saying this? Because once you are AOR, it's not about passing the exam and getting the code. Afterwards, it is doing the job. So what is expected that you should be in the position to identify the substantial question of law from the facts, given facts. And for that, it is very necessary that you know how to apply these principles, because this is what we do under 136 when we draft the SLP and we go for the argument to bring out the substantial question of law. So this context, issue, ratio, minority view, as well as significance of the judgment has to be seen while reading, preparing notes of every judgment. I suggest preparation of notes, of course, subject to whatever way you would like to prepare. I'm not considering this lecture just as teaching of those 86 judgments to you. As I said, you all are lawyers, professionals, you all know that. I'm basically trying to explain how in limited time one can refresh complete memory, because the presumption is all judgments you have read and then present it effectively for the examination. So let's start with your first case, which is Keshwanand Bharti. We all have read and we have been reading from our college days until now many times. We often read it selectively, but even if we read it selectively, we need to know now for this exam that what are the important legal issues where in that matter. The background, the context of this case was that Parliament has come up with the amendment. I'm just trying to refresh, you all know that. When they came up with the amendment, they tried to curb the power of judicial review, and also the effort was when I'm sure to amend the constitution and to have impact on liberty, and where is there any issue? The ratio was, we all know, we all have read even from our college days that no, this power cannot be unlimited, and that is where the principle of basic structure has come up. We all got it. Now, when you are reading this judgment, the issue is power to amend the law. Now the ratio has come out as no, the power is not unlimited, but the significance, which I said that every judgment we have to see, is the coming out of the basic structure doctrine. Now this doctrine has to be prepared, has to be studied, that the question may be based upon that also. Doctrine, we got that here are criteria from where you cannot go and alter. You can do, you have the power, but there is always limitation to it. Then next is in the same sequence, Minerva Mills, which is your serial number 3. In certain cases, I may like to give you serial number 3, but I'm sure these are all familiar judgments, we all know. So there again the challenge was the primacy given to the directive principles. Can it be over fundamental right? So you can see that this judgment come up with the beautiful issue that how within constitution, if there is any issue, then how judiciary can balance it. And that is where this becomes the landmark judgment. So can the Parliament amend the constitution to make one provision more relevant than the other one? In this, again, the issue of Keshwanand Bharti was discussed, and then it was reinforced that the judiciary is the guardian and judicial review power is with Supreme Court of India, where the Parliament is Supreme Court to frame the law, to draft the law, to enact the law, Supreme Court has the power to review and test it on constitutionality and in the public interest. Further, in the same sequence at serial number 23, IR Polo versus State of Tamil Nadu, it was again about the violation of fundamental rights, and the scrutiny took place by the Supreme Court, and the judicial review was done, and whatever loopholes have come in ninth schedule by amendment, judicial review has protected that. So when you read these judgments, when you go through it, you can see this all interconnected. It all has certain issues being overlapped. In first judgment it was raised, in another it was affirmed, in another maybe it was little more interpreted. Now when you get your question paper, I would suggest you, as I said to start with, it is an open book exam. Please read your paper carefully, peacefully first, because you have everything on your table from where you can just look the material and copy it down if you wish to. But the questions may not be of the nature that you could just look for it and copy it down. There could be requirement of application of mind. There could be requirement of understanding the views, explaining the views which may not be written directly in the head notes. So by sincere suggestion to all of you to read the judgments, to identify issues, and when any question is asked which doesn't refer any judgment particularly, and it is a question on law or facts in whatever way, don't limit yourself while referring one judgment. Do refer all judgments which are landmark judgment, at least whatever is in your syllabus, in your leading cases, at least on the same issue. Because if a issue is being asked, for example, even that judicial review or even power of the parliament to enact the law, so you should presume that basic structure doctrine is definitely required to be answered, and wherever it is affirmed, especially in your syllabus, that is required to be presented as well. So one thing is that you read your questions peacefully, apply your mind, that whether don't just rush for searching for the head note for one judgment. Think that whatever judgments the one question may be expecting you to write about. Second thing is also, I mean, in between itself I can say, how many pages one has written doesn't ensure the mark. It is the content. It is the content which ensured the mark. So kindly focus yourself on content, and questions might also specify that what is an standard word limit is expected. Try to read for that also. That's why I said read question papers carefully. Because when you read carefully, you can look for the word limit, you can look for the marks assigned to that particular question paper. So you should not waste your time on some question which might have the lower mark, and you can utilize that time to somewhere else. So time management in open book exam is very important. I'm sure you all know, but still I'm just reminding, because in 5 years of practice and especially arguing before Honorable Supreme Court, where we always define our 30-second and 2 minutes in terms of half an hour and 1 hour when we submit to Honorable Court, please don't go for that standard, because registry would ensure here 3 hours means 3 hours only, unlike our liberal Honorable Lordships who still allow us our 30-second and 2 minutes to go for 20 minutes and 30 minutes. So keep that also in mind. Then as I said, I'm trying to touch upon certain cases, not all. So Indira Sahni versus Union of India, we all know that the issue was about 27% reservation, and basically the implementation of Mandal Commission recommendation was the issue. When it was challenged, then the outcome was, we all know, that the ceiling on the percentage of reservation has come, then the creamy layer concept has come, and the basic structure doctrine also got somewhere the relevance over here as well. So the new concept came, as well as the established concept was discussed. Now the significance, we all know, we know the social welfare concept and its significance. So if you need to analyze, you need to apply, you know how to go about it. Further, another judgment at 49 is Jarnail Singh versus Lakshmi Narayan Gupta in 2018. Again, it was about creamy layer and regarding promotions. So the extension of that landmark judgment is ongoing. So when we say 86 judgments, actually if you prepare while dividing it into the subject wise, you would not find the syllabus as a big syllabus, because everything is in line of certain areas of law only, and without reading the updated pronouncements, your knowledge would not be updated. But at the same time, the original concept, like Keshwanand Bharati, we don't argue every day, but without referring Keshwanand Bharati, anything where we talk about the limiting the legislative power cannot be complete. So that is something we have to study. So if you divide subject wise, like I have divided for my lecture preparation, I have divided, and in that sequence only I am presenting. So if you divide, the 86 doesn't look big. It is a very limited certain area of practice, and that is necessary also, because all may not be practicing in every area. So if you get the option to opt answering certain questions and maybe option to leave certain, you would have a scope to choose whatever subject area you are more comfortable with. So now after Indira Sani, Jarnail Singh comes in 2018, and it talks about the creamy layer. That discussion goes on, of course, in different contexts. It is about the promotion, and it refers again that yes, applicability of basic structure doctrine is there, and therefore, so if the question is asked that what is the basic structure doctrine and how it is relevant, then your question would not be limited only to Keshwanand Bharati. All this will become relevant, and it's by default, it's all going to be relevant, and it is supposed to be like that. Another is Janhit Abhiyan versus Union of India, where another amendment was being challenged, which was regarding a reservation for EWS in education and employment. And the question was again about 50% ceiling, which was given in past judgments, should be applicable or should it be? Whether it is violative of basic structure doctrine or not, and the same thing. So far we have discussed 6, 7, 8 judgments, and you can see the same issue we are talking. We are talking about basic structure doctrine, we are talking about reservation, we are talking about creamy layer. It's just the extension of the area of law we are discussing. Now let's go to something new, some other area of law, because the same way you can continue with all judgments in your syllabus, which is based upon reservation or the interpretation of constitutional law provisions. Now there are judgments which talks about protection of human dignity, identification of gender. I will take up a few such judgments now. For example, Nalsa versus Union of India. It was about transgender persons, their social status, and the formal recognition. The issue was whether transgender persons have the right to self-identify their gender, and whether non-recognition violates Article 14, 15, 19 and 21 or not. So these judgments are often not only interpreting the constitutional provision, also try to see if there is any violation of such, if any action or inaction of the government is in violation of that articles or not. So it is test also. It's constitutional interpretation as well as constitutionalism. So then we all know it got recognized as a third gender, and that is where the significance of this judgment is. Later on, Navtej Singh Johar versus Union of India has come in the same regard. Then it talks about 377 IPC and whether criminalizing the same is constitutional or not. So the exact legal issue was whether Section 377 IPC violates fundamental rights under Article 14, 15, 19 and 21. And 377 became unconstitutional up to the extent of criminalizing consensual relationship, and right to orientation became part of Article 21, right to dignity and privacy. So while the question was about 14, 15, 16, Article 21 was to get interpreted, and then Article 21, if you see your leading cases, so the landmark is Maneka Gandhi. I didn't take up because we all know, we all have read so many times. So I'm trying to take up the cases which maybe of different areas of law, and that could be seen in the read in the same line. So the same way Maneka Gandhi can be prepared for exam. So in this, right to dignity and privacy was covered. So Article 21 has been the most discussed and being interpreted, and so many fundamental rights have come up from the Article 14, the term right to dignity, live with dignity, and that is where this is all judgments which goes along with this line can be prepared in the same way. That what was that context. For example, here in this case, Section 377 IPC was criminalizing even two consensual relationships. So something which was later on accepted as a natural third gender choice was being considered as a criminal act. So then that is the context. So they had a reason to come, and then the issue was framed whether it is the fundamental right or not. Now it was fundamental right under Article 21, and then the right got affirmed. Now significance, we know later on so many judgments, their rights, different areas have come. If it's not in your legal leading cases, but if the question is being asked, discuss the significance, discuss the impact or implication of the judgment. So even judgments which are not even marked as leading judgments, but if you think that is the impact of this judgment, you should refer that. Also one thing, in between whatever I'm remembering regarding examination presentation, I'm putting forward my points as well. It goes without saying, as in when you refer any judgment, you should write the citation, because it's not LLB exam, it's of practitioners having minimum 5 years experience. So the citation has the significance, especially because there are so many names of judgments which have common names and issues are different as per the year, as per the citation details. So kindly try to write citation in cases when you refer. Wherever the question is just asked on legal aspect, it is basic presumption that your question should start and have the reference to the leading judgment prescribed in your syllabus. It goes without saying. Question need not require to illustrate that, explain with the help of leading cases or reference cases. No, it is understood, it is examination of leading cases. Whatever question is being asked, it has to start with the leading cases from your syllabus as well as beyond, if it is about significance and impact. Now there are more cases where the interpretation by Honorable Court has taken place regarding human rights, due process and dignity. As I said, most of the fundamental rights have come out of that. So few cases I'm taking up where due process is being defined, human dignity and the accountability of criminal justice system, because these things are basics to ensure fundamental right. And when we have the constitution, when we have a basic structured doctrine that government should not touch this, then everything has to be tested, complete procedure has to be in accordance with that constitutional protection. So, for example, D.K. Vasu versus state of West Bengal. The context was, the background was, there were custodial deaths and torture. It goes on even today, and if D.K. Basu is strictly applicable, and that is where D.K. Basu is still relevant. The judgment of 90s is still so relevant because every day in newspaper we read certain cases. So the custodial death and torture without proper accountability was the background in which this case was before Honorable Court. Now, the issue was what procedural safeguards must be followed during the arrest and detention to protect personal liberty, because personal liberty is protected under Article 21. So this judgment has laid down specific guidelines for arrest and detention. And needless to say all this, because you all have read in your 5 years, but right to inform relatives, medical checks, memo of arrest, etc., all that you can say SOP has come up with this, guideline has come up with this. When I started, I said that all judgments are not only for you to clear your AOR exam and then become the advocate on record for having the code for filing. These judgments, all these judgments helps you to practice before Honorable Court with effective knowledge and assistance, because this is our first duty, that we must assist the Honorable Court in addition to representing our client's best interest. So these judgment, for example, like I said, D.K. Basu, it is like we have to know. Otherwise, even if we are for prosecution, we may violate the Supreme Court judgment. If we are for accused side, we may not be effectively able to protect our client. So for both sides, for practice, we need to know that. Now, if somebody asks the significance of this judgment, you know what you are supposed to say, because relevance, significance, and impact. So this standard of procedure given for arrest, then the custodial abuse, these things are definitely supposed to be reduced, and police has to respect the human dignity. This is what impact, in my understanding, and there can be many impact which you can add of this judgment. So it is not only the fundamental right, it is a human rights protection in general as well. And human rights protection are, you can see that all international commitments we have. So most of the fundamental rights we have recognized in express terms when we got the constitution. But later on, the second generation human rights, still it's keep coming, and that is where 21 is being, and 19 also is keep getting expanded. So all these judgments helps you to assist the court wherever, before whichever court we appear, to how to interpret the provision and how to frame the guidelines to protect more rights which are may not be directly but indirectly inherent in the constitution, having the right to dignity as well as the liberty. Another example in the same context is Vishakha versus State of Rajasthan. We all know this is the very, it is on your serial number 13, that we have not foreseen the situation at that time when we got the constitution, perhaps in express terms, that there can be a problem of sexual harassment at workplace. And then when this matter came before Honorable Court, then the question was, can the court lay down binding guidelines to prevent sexual harassment and protect the rights under Article 14, 15, 19 as well as 21? We all know that this has led to enactment by the Parliament as well, but then the interpretation power of the Supreme Court has played the significant role in protection of women's rights and facilitating the better work environment for women. So this judgment has come up with the Vishakha guidelines, and then the POSH Act for gender dignity as well as safety at the workplace. So the ratio, when you see the ratio of the judgment is yes, this is the guideline. The significance, yes, the protection of women at workplace, and the impact is POSH Act 2013. It is such a big impact, but again, impact is not limited to that. You can think of impact and explain in limited word as well as. Now, there is another, I mean, this is about human dignity part and fundamental right part, how the judgments have been interpreting. So all judgments which are talking about human rights or protection of dignity, etc., I would suggest you to read in the same way from the same context while seeing the relevant context. Now let's go for some different judgments as well. At your serial number 85, the Property Owners Association. But before that, Mafatlal has come, I believe. Yes. Before that, I will take the Mafatlal. Mafatlal Industries Limited was is at serial number 12 in your list. It was about the concern over refund of excise duties paid under mistake or protest, especially after post-assessment. In that background, this case has come, and the issue was in Mafatlal Industries case in 90s, can a claim for refund of excise duty be maintained independently of statutory provisions under constitutional remedies like Article 226 or 32. So this judgment is relevant not only for the purpose of tax law practitioners, it is also relevant for the purpose of understanding jurisdiction of high courts as well as Supreme Court in the area of economic law, taxation law mainly. The ratio of the judgment was refunds must be claimed only under Central Excise Act and not directly by writ petition, except wherever there is the violation of fundamental right. So that part, Article 226 and 32, where you have to show that is there, and after that only go for the specific legislation. So the significance of this judgment was that it has clarified that there is limited use of writ jurisdiction for monetary claims, and the statutory mechanism, especially like enactment like tax or regulatory litigation, the statutory mechanism is required to be followed, and the writ can be maintained only when there is fundamental right violation. So we also know that, I mean, you have practiced 4 years, again, minimum. I know there must be many senior people as well in various court, and then the Supreme Court. In Supreme Court, when we enter, and that is where the AOR becomes the significant, and we have the separate category of advocate. The Supreme Court practice varies from other courts because we first have to show in our drafting as well as in our opening argument also that how and why there is necessity of invocation of the jurisdiction. Until we show that on merit whatever matter we have, we cannot present. So here it is very important that we should know the jurisdiction as well as the power. So this Mafatlal, when you deal with any finance related law, especially tax laws, then it is very important for you to understand that whether you should go for writ or you should exercise the statutory remedy. In your drafting paper book and Supreme Court rules, you have seen the Supreme Court rules gives the different kind of jurisdiction, and there is special jurisdiction where you directly come from the tribunals in statutory appeals. So those kind of enactments where the appeal procedure is separate and jurisdiction is separate, whether you should go on 26 or 32 directly or first exercise that, to understand the Mafatlal judgment is important. Then at serial number 85, there is a judgment, Property Owners Association versus State of Maharashtra. This case was, the background context was, because now again we are moving towards the property and the tax and etc. This kind of issues. We have moved from the first generation rights. There was a law, Maharashtra Housing and Area Development Act in 1976, which allowed Mumbai Building Repair and Reconstruction Board to acquire certain cessed properties for restoration purposes with the consent of 70% of residents. The Property Owners Association contended in that case that such acquisition violated their property rights because it was privately owned properties, and it should not be considered as material resource to the community under Article 39B of the Constitution. So the material resource of the community is the term which was under discussion, and in that context this matter has come up before the Supreme Court. Now, it was the issue whether Article 31C as upheld in Keshwanand Bharti continues to remain operative in the Constitution, whether the interpretation of material resources of the community under 39B includes privately owned resources, whether the observations in other cases like Mafatlal etc. regarding inclusion of privately owned resources under 39B are binding precedents or not. So when you read this case, already Mafatlal, you have to go with that. That's why I explained Mafatlal first and then I came to this. So there was a majority view as well as the minority view in this case. It was 9 judges bench judgment. So the majority view, I would just read. It held that to the Article 31C, to the extent validated in Keshwanand Bharti, continues to remain operative in the Constitution, providing constitutional protection, giving effect to Article 39B. The court also clarified that the majority judgment in Ranganatha Reddy had explicitly distanced itself from the minority interpretation of 39B in that case, and therefore subsequent lines of minority view, and there were many judgments referred actually in that case. So that judgment deals with many judgments on this issue. And to say observation by Mafatlal regarding material resources of the community, including privately owned resources, obiter dicta and not ratio decidendi, thus not binding on future benches. While acknowledging that material resources of the community under Article 39B may theoretically include private resources, the court rejected the expensive interpretation that all private resources meeting material needs automatically qualify as community resources. That was majority view, but there were two views. One was a concurring opinion which was with majority but having a separate view, that also I will read by Justice Nagaratna. Agreed with the majority view that the Article 36C continues to remain operative and that not all privately owned resources can be considered material resources. However, she emphasized that the observation in Ranganatha Reddy and Mafatlal Industries should not be disregarded entirely, as they were made in different circumstances and constitutional context. Now, I have, as I said, that all 86 I may not be able to explain, but I have picked up this is very with the mindset that where I could show you that if you are asked to analyze or you are asked to show the significance how you should go. Now, the in this it is being affirmed or it is being followed or it is called as it is a separate matter. For to understand Mafatlal, you need to know the property owner's case. Then only your contextual answer on this issue can be complete. Or even to answer this, you have to deal with Mafatlal. So 86 is not 86. It would be hardly 10 if you even read issue wise. So this. The Property Owners Association case says that Mafatlal was in a different constitutional context. Now, if the question is that give your views, then of course you have freedom to agree with any of these views, as I explained 2 views so far. Now, you may have a third view as well, which was the dissenting opinion. Dissenting opinion was by one bench member, and honorable members disagreed with the majority interpretation. advocating for a broader understanding of material resources of the community under 39B to include privately owned resources that serve the common good. So there are three different understandings, and when you deal with the question which is based upon issue, not based upon naming the just judgment, then you are expected to deal with all these various judgments at different timeline, whether they were actually contextually different or it was dealt together. That view is expected with the citation of the judgments. Now, this judgment clarifies the scope of material resources of the community under Article 39B and the continued applicability of 39C. This is the significance as I could understand from the judgment. By rejecting the interpretation that all private properties can be considered private resources, the court has reinforced the protection of individual property rights against arbitrary state acquisition. The decision also underscored the necessity for a balanced approach that respect both his individual rights as well as state welfare objectives. So, if I am asked to give the significance of this, I would say the significance is that how individual right and the state power was being balanced, and how when there was conflict the individual right was given primacy, and its future implication would be on all acquisitions which is a government duty. Of course, this judgment has to be considered before deciding any acquisition, that whether, especially for the socio-economic policies related acquisitions, this judgment hold the significance. Now, another area of law which I would like to touch upon is serial number 75, Fox and Kings Limited versus SAP India. It is 2023 judgment. It was about the arbitration proceedings, and the issue was whether non-signatory entities within the same corporate group could be bound by the arbitration agreement under the group of companies doctrine or not. So you can see how the new issues with the new corporate structural change has been coming up, and that has to be decided, and if these are not included in AOR syllabus, then the knowledge would not be updated. So the question was whether non-signatory entities within the same corporate group can be bound by an arbitration agreement under the group of companies doctrine. What factors should be considered to determine applicability of the doctrine in Indian arbitration law? And the Supreme Court held that non-signatory entities within the same corporate group can be bound by an arbitration agreement if certain conditions are met. So that is what has come up with the judgment. Those certain conditions, of course, you have to read, and if it is asked, you need to present. The court emphasized that the doctrine is based on the mutual intent of parties as inferred from their conduct and does not require the piercing of corporate veil. The court outlined specific factors. So those factors, etc., when it is about what has come as ratio, all those factors which are listed in the judgment are supposed to be read and seen. The new thing which has come was about the discussion on group of companies in the context of arbitration cases, because arbitration, when we talk, it is always like A versus V, but it's not that. Here it was group of companies were also in discussion, and that is where a novelty has come up, and it has significance of giving more effective arbitration outcome in India, because we have arbitration outcome but not that effective. But this judgment would definitely have the impact on that. Now, arbitration we touched, we can go to now Competition Commission related cases also we have in our syllabus. So your serial number 40 has Excel Corp Care versus Competition Commission of India. This case involves CCI investigation on anti-competitive behavior of Excel Corp Care Limited. It was about price fixing in the agriculture and crop protection industry. The issue was that Excel was accused of colluding with other market players to rig prices and restrict market competition. So the market competition commission's duty is to check that nobody should monopolize the market, and this is where this investigation has gone. Now the outcome of this judgment was that yes, Excel Corp had engaged in anti-competitive conduct under the Competition Act while colluding with the competitors to fix prices, and the court has upheld the penalty imposed by the CCI, Competition Commission of India, and reinforced the importance of curbing anti-competitive practices. This, when we talk about competition law, the first thing comes to our mind, oh, it is about business law, we have nothing to do with that. But what we often miss that it is about the society. We all are directly hit by these kind of things. So these judgments which looks like the commercial law practice, it is not. For example, this matter, it is about the farmers and farming price. So the person who can be practicing in general civil law also may require to know this, because then only would be able to advise the client effectively to deal with this and to assist the court, which is the basic duty of an AOR, and to frame the substantial question of law. We need to know these judgments, that how these, if few people together decide to hijack the market and fix it, this is illegal activity, and Competition Commission of India is there to protect that. Now this judgment is important for that purpose, because even in small industries, I mean, significance, if I need to see, or even impact of this judgment I need to see, it does have impact, because often in small market associations, they take these decisions. Now how their power to take decision as an association has the impact, whether it is coming in way of non-compliance of competition law or not. This aspect, it has significance for that. Now let's move to environment law, because we are close to 1 hour, but I want to touch upon every law. So environment law, let's deal with Vellore Citizen Welfare Forum, which is serial number 10 in your list. The case was filed by Vellore Citizens Welfare Forum against pollution caused by tanneries in Tamil Nadu, which led to severe contamination in the river, and which was problem for public health. They filed PIL and asked for government action. The question was framed whether industrial pollution, particularly by tanneries, violates fundamental right under Article 21, right to life, and we are talking about 90s. This judgment is of 90s. And what measures should be taken to curb pollution? So, Honorable Supreme Court held that right to clean and healthy environment is an integral part of the right to life under Article 21. The court directed the closure of those polluting tanneries and ordered state government to adopt measures to address environmental degradation issues. This case is landmark because it recognized the environmental right as a fundamental right, and it also fixed the accountability of government at both central and state level to act so the public interest for health is protected. Now, after this 90s, another judgment I would like to take up on environmental law is Common Cause versus Union of India in 2017. It was in 2017, and I must say, when I take name of Common Cause, these are those judgments which makes it mandatory that you must write the citation, because with similar name you can see so many judgments in your book, in your syllabus. So kindly make sure to write the citations. This case emerged from illegal mining activities and then the tribal communities were adversely affected by those activities, and therefore this petition has come. The issue was whether the Supreme Court can direct the Union of India and State of Orissa to immediately stop illegal mining activities, and whether the court can terminate leases found to be involved in illegal mining and mining in violation of environmental law per se, and whether the court can direct action against violators, including prosecution and recovery of illegally accumulated wealth. So this judgment has become very important because by the time the environmental law was set in motion, and court has set a very established jurisprudence on environmental law by the time this judgment was before the court. The Supreme Court has directed in this case that the Central Empowered Committee to conduct thorough investigation into illegal mining activities. It mandated the suspension of mining operations in leases lacking necessary environmental clearances and forest approvals. The court also ordered the recovery of illegally accumulated wealth through penalties, etc., which is as per Section 21(5) of Mining and Mineral Act, and also there were environmental laws for that purpose too, and tribal welfare laws also for their protection. So to implement those laws, the court has directed. This judgment is significant because of role of judiciary not only to protect the communities but also insisted upon stringent compliance of environmental laws regulation by the commercial entities which were doing mining, because environment law by then was in place, but the compliance, because before starting any entity there are set number of environment compliance regulations, but whether it is being properly followed, fully complied or not, court has entered into that and then decides, which has significant impact after that the clearance etc. has to be properly given. Now, after environment, there are more cases related to all these issues, but I am just picking few to cover up all issues. But rest judgments which are based upon the same legal area must be checked. Kindly don't skip any judgment, because as I said, question may not be that write this judgment, because it is open book exam. Question would be on point of law or any area, and where you would perhaps require to go through many judgments to answer one question. So another important judgment which I thought I must refer is Central Public Information Officer, Supreme Court of India versus Subhash Chandra Agrawal, because right to information is another important area of law, and this judgment is serial number 56 in your syllabus. This case concerned to RTI and judicial transparency. So, Right to Information Act as well as Supreme Court power both are under discussion in this case. So, this is definitely being practitioner of this court. You must go through in detail. And because this has also touched upon something which was very much in news recently about assets detail of judges, including declaration under RTI, not the self-declaration. So, the SCR, Supreme Court rules, as well as the RTI angle would be seen in this judgment. So, the judicial independence as well as RTI, this angle one could see in this judgment. And the question of law was whether judicial declaration of assets are subject to disclosure under RTI Act, whether the Supreme Court's personal and financial information are exempted from being disclosed under RTI by virtue of concept of judicial independence, whether the Supreme Court is a public authority under RTI Act which mandate the disclosure, whether the information sought by Agrawal constitute personal information and information pertaining to public interest. So, some of you may be practicing in RTI, so you know that RTI mandates the disclosure, but at the same time there are exemptions. There are exemptions, for example, third party information, there are condition where what you have being public authority can only declare. If you don't have the information, you cannot. And in case of Supreme Court, there are judicial side as well as administrative side. Then we govern with our own rule as per constitutional law provisions. So this judgment is to be seen to understand this interplay, and it will definitely show the significance as well as the relevance, because judicial independence as well as public confidence both are very important aspects. Now, with this major areas of law which I have decided to touch upon, almost I have touched. If you permit me, maybe I would like to see at some question. Otherwise, I will take up more questions from you, more from judgment list. So I'll just check your questions if I may like to find something which I have to answer, or you can raise hands also maybe. Because here I can't see much. Thank you so much. I'm trying to be concise, but I'm trying to give you way how to read and how to understand all those judgments which I may not have touched, but I'm keep repeating that kindly read all judgments. Pattern of question, etc. I think it's registry, you should say. But as I said, all earlier question papers, as you have seen, there are some optional questions where you can choose from. So the same should be followed. I mean, some options you may get, but otherwise pattern, etc. Expectations, as I shared to begin with itself, that you are not supposed to copy the head note because it's open book exam in your answer script. That definitely not expected. Read your questions carefully. Frame your mind first looking at the word limit and marks given before every question, and then first make up your mind this question involves whichever judgments, and then answer what exactly is being asked. Don't copy paste just the head notes, because that would not serve any purpose except just making your hands tired and wasting your ink. That would not serve any purpose. The application of mind is what would be expected, and if anything whatever given to you may help you to remind yourself that okay, this case involved this question, but write in your words. Don't copy paste the answer, the head notes which are given in that. There are so many chat messages. I am trying to scroll, but I may not be able to scroll all, but whatever recent I can see, I'm trying to answer. Yes, concise remark or opinion at the last is definitely expected. And no, you don't need to memorize the citations. Citations, as I said, it is open book exam. Citations are presented with all head notes presented with you in the answer, I think on your table. So you don't need to memorize. Objective question, no. Objective question was, I think, sometime when there was online exam. It should not be objective type. It's normal examination. Now we are back to normal routine, unlike the COVID phase. And criminal law cases I wanted to take up, Sushila, etc. But as I said, I just wanted to check your issues, because every area of law would be covered. So I think criminal I am yet to touch upon. Yes, criminal law I am yet to touch upon. I have prepared all 86 case notes, but I cannot. But I'll just see whatever cases I can touch upon. Kaushal, Kishore, and some of the cases definitely, and Rupa Hurra also I want to discuss. So let me not read your questions, because if I'll read your questions, I would miss somewhere. Yes, Rupa Ashok Hurra, I should. Your serial number 15 has Rupa Ashok Hurra versus Ashok Hurra, because when you are in Supreme Court AOR, this is a special jurisdiction, of course, so you must know. Every jurisdiction given in the Supreme Court rules, we know petition review, but this judgment is important because it gives a new jurisdiction. So I'm not reading comments right now. Hold on your questions. I want to talk about Rupa Hura. So the context in this case was that matter was concluded, no remedy was available for correcting the judgment by the Supreme Court, but there was a fact where there could be miscarriage of justice. Then the question in this case was, is there any residual jurisdiction in the Supreme Court to reconsider its own final judgment? And then the concept of curative petition got introduced, and it is rare as rare jurisdiction is, similarly rare circumstances are prescribed in the judgment which would give you reason to invoke this process, because there should not be abuse of process, because the main principle is finality of the judgment. There has to be finality of the judgment, but just because there is a finality, there should not be miscarriage of justice, and therefore this judgment has bring up the criteria, which is very strict criteria, which brings a new jurisdiction to the residual jurisdiction to the Supreme Court in exceptional circumstances. So this somewhere I have missed, so I thought I should say. Then some criminal cases also I should take. I think all other areas of law I have touched upon, but some criminal cases I would like to touch upon. So like Nandini Sundar versus State of Chhattisgarh 65, it was about the balancing how you can balance the right of civilian as well as the security concerns by the government, and in strained areas how to protect right to life and equality as well as the security, which is the important thing. So Nandini Sundar talks about that. Then Kaushal Kishore versus State of Uttar Pradesh 2023, it is very important. When I say important, I'm talking about practice, and all leading judgments are important, so don't misunderstand me using the term important, because since I'm not discussing all 86, but again I'm saying all 86 are important for your practice and for your examination purpose as well. So Kaushal Kishore talks about the hate speech and then fundamental right, how it can be enforced again even non-state actors, and then it should be considered as the fundamental right. Also, one important judgment I wanted to take up, two judgments rather, let me take now out of turn. Justice Puttaswamy, that is in your syllabus, right to privacy, and Shreya Singhal versus Union of India, which was about freedom of speech. So these two judgments I wanted to take up together to show, and I suggest that you must, when you read, don't read two separately, think in that line, that how Puttaswamy judgment has protected our right to privacy, how we have right to go hold our own private document for like Aadhaar card. If we don't want to share, we can't share. At the same time, totally in opposite direction stories, Shreya Singhal, which says I can speak whatever I want to speak. So how to draw a balance in between because the moment we say I can speak and I have freedom to speak, at the same time there would be a reception end as well. It may be affecting what I'm saying can affect somebody else. So maybe I'm talking about a third party, which is third party's privacy. So how the freedom of speech and right to privacy often overlap, and how we can balance, apply your mind on that as well, especially in today's social sites era, because Shreya Singhal talks about that, the information technology, everything is on social site, and we feel free to write anything and everything. In that process, we must not violate somebody's right protected under Puttaswamy, and how it can be, how the judiciary has protected and balanced both that is necessary to be seen. So these two judgments, I'm just scrolling down my list of judgments if there is, and if you want me to explain anything separately, I would definitely now take up, because from my side I am covering every areas of law. I think I have covered almost every. If something is like, yes, the judicial review and legislative immunity. The AR Antule case is talking about this. So the issue in AR Antule, which is serial number 5 of your syllabus, can judicial review be exercised over legislative action? So we have federalism, we have separation of power, but in between often we see that there is overlapping. Judiciary policy decision is being taken by the parliament, and then somewhere in the judicial review it get a form, it may not get a form. How these both rights can be balanced, legislative action as well as the judicial, two constitutional concepts, how it was balanced by the Honorable Supreme Court. You can see in Antule versus S.R. Nayak. The ratio of this judgment was that judicial review applies to legislative proceeding if it involves fundamental right or it is beyond competence. So the power to make law is always with the parliament, but there are two riders given by this judgment. One, that when it is about fundamental right, then definitely it has to be balanced within the fundamental right guaranteed to the citizens under the Constitution of India, and the law must be made within the legislative competence. It must not go beyond the legislative competence. So this judgment is very significant. Parliamentary immunity as well as the constitutional limits imposed on that, and affirmation of fundamental rights and its protection. So this is another judgment. Then yes, presidential reference. How can I forget that? You have three presidential reference in your syllabus. One is regarding tax, another is about abrogation of Article 370, and one was two or three. How many? I think two only. Two or three, no? Anyways, let me discuss this, what I have in front of me. So the reference, special reference under Article 143 in 2012. The 2012 one is about the Vodafone International Holding versus Union of India case, where the tax was the issue, and the issues framed in this were whether the Supreme Court's ruling in Vodafone was correct in law regarding indirect transfers not being taxable in India. Second, whether the transaction involving offshore transfer of shares which result in indirect transfer of assets in India can be taxed under Indian law. And third, whether the retrospective amendment made by Finance Act 2012 to tax such transaction was constitutionally valid or not. So presidential reference as concept in constitution law, you all know. I just don't want to talk much about it, but then just to give the background, that the president at any stage can ask questions, refer questions to the Supreme Court, and presently we know one question is already going to be heard next week, which we are looking forward to. But that is a constitutional provision under 143, which was exercised in 2012, and the ratio of this judgment was into this, the reference 2012 was that Vodafone ruling was correct in law and did not require reconsideration. The court also declined the opinion on the constitutional validity of retrospective taxation, stating that such issues should be decided in appropriate legal proceeding, not in presidential reference. So this judgment becomes relevant for us to know in what circumstance and when the Supreme Court can restrict itself from answering the particular reference which was made under Article 143. So it's not only about what was answered, its significance of this judgment goes beyond that when the Supreme Court is not bound to answer the presidential reference. because it is advisory jurisdiction. We know that there is original jurisdiction, appellate jurisdiction, and advisory jurisdiction. All three jurisdiction is before the Supreme Court. So this advisory jurisdiction, three judgments are in your syllabus. Kindly go through that. This one becomes important for knowing the condition in which the Supreme Court can refuse. Then another reference is under 2022-23, which was about this Article 370, abrogation of 370, and how this can be abrogated, and it has a different issue. So go through that. These all judgments are actually, as I said to begin with, every judgment can go for more than 1 hour lecture. Every judgment can go for more than 1 hour lecture. So I will just try to touch base upon. I'm just looking for my criminal law lectures, which I notes where I can explain some criminal law cases which I am yet to explain. I think all other I have so far done. So just few criminal law cases, because education law, this PA Namdar and TMA Pai, etc., when you start reading this Indra Shani and other judgments of reservation education, it all goes in one thing. So you can read all that by your own. That will be in the same sequence you would be doing. So that's why it's not necessary that I should touch upon. Again, the serial number 29 is Novartis. Novartis is 29. It is on law of patent. So again, IPR is a different area of law. So we can discuss that matter. So it was about the patentability of cancer drug. So Novartis AZ versus Union of India. This judgment is on intellectual property rights. It's a separate area of law which I have not yet touched. So I'm taking it up. In this, the background was that a cancer drug was to be patented, and it was sought to be patented in India, but the Indian government denied the patent, claiming that the drug lacked novelty and was only a new form of already existing compound. So issue was whether Section 3D of Patents Act is constitutional and whether a cancer drug was eligible for patent protection under Indian law. The Supreme Court upheld Section 3D of Patents Act and ruled that new form of the drug did not meet the novelty criteria, and inventive step is always required for patenting, and therefore this patent was not allowed. This had significance because when there is a patent of anything, then if there is no competitive another brand, then the market price, etc. So it has its social impact as well. So this judgment, of course, should be seen as law of intellectual property right vis-a-vis right to health angle, and it is relevance from that point of view. One could see that. Then yes, Sushila Agrawal, I wanted to see it is because I personally as lawyer has been arguing this judgment a lot, and because I have seen in lower courts especially, often people mix in principles of bail, which is what should be this principle to grant bail, as well as anticipatory bail. Both they see from the same angle, and the problem is because this judgment is not seen perhaps. So the issue in Sushila Agrawal was, the background was that it was denied bail, anticipatory bail in a criminal case of cheating and fraud. And the issue became that can anticipatory bail be granted to an accused in a case of cheating and fraud, and whether the powers of the High Court should be exercised to grant bail before arrest or not. So from these both point of view, this judgment becomes important. Supreme Court held that anticipatory bail can be granted under Section 438 of the CRPC, even in cases involving economic offences, provided that reasonable ground exists to believe that the accused may be wrongfully implicated. And this case, as I said, becomes significant because often courts mix the principles for bail as well as the anticipatory bail, where anticipatory bail has a different purpose altogether than the case of bail. Then another is in the same way, your sequence 66 is Anish Kumar versus State of Bihar. This case has the issue of arrest without warrant. It is very important and it has been constantly in the news, because I remember Justice Kaul often getting very upset with the prosecution that nobody reads and follow Arnesh Kumar. So if you are practitioner from accused side, defense side, then it is important for you, as well as if you are from prosecution side, it is very important as well. So the issue was whether an arrest can be made in cases of dowry harassment without a warrant, and whether the Arnesh Kumar guideline, which was the old Arnesh Kumar also. So there are more than one Arnesh Kumar, and I would suggest whether one is in your syllabus, but you should read both. The Supreme Court laid down the guideline in this case regarding the arrest, and that becomes the significant, as the Arnesh Kumar guideline makes stop misuse of law, especially in this family matters where DB is invoked and a sudden complete family gets arrested. So this has its own significance. Then in the same context, Satyendra Kumar Antil versus CBI, it's a 2022 case. It is another important when it comes to economic offences. It was the issue in this Satyendra Kumar Antil was whether arresting individuals in economic offences without adequate justification violates constitutional right, whether courts are ensuring timely disposal of bail application, whether investigative agencies comply with section 41, 40A of the CRPC. See, these judgments may talk about CRPC and you have your own BNSS right now, but the principle doesn't get changed, section number may get changed. So therefore don't think these judgments are not important to read and why it is in your syllabus. It is still important because the principle remains same, numbers may vary. So in this case, court held that arrest should be exception, not the rule, and emphasized that bail is the norm, and directed that it was to be disposed expeditiously. So it has, it not only impact upon the accused right to go for liberty, etc. It also has, this judgment also has significance for the functioning of the courts which are dealing with the bail cases. So this becomes important as for institution as well as for the citizens in the country. An important judgment again for 31. Again, I must clarify, my important means the importance of law. So don't take it as any hint or clue. Please, it is, so all judgments are important. Since I am dealing with less time, I am just picking few. 31 in your sequence is Lalita Kumari versus State of UP. This is significant for the purpose of registration of FIR and the place and the right of citizens under Article 21, that where the FIR should be registered. So this case is significant for any criminal law practitioner and it must be dealt with. Another also important area of law I was going to miss, thank God I opened my note, the IBC in this Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code. That is also an area of law where you have got a few judgments in your list. One is Committee of Creditors versus SR Steel India versus Satish Kumar Gupta, and another is Swiss Ribbons versus Union of India. Swiss Ribbons is about the constitutionality of the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code. In addition to various other issues, the constitutionality was upheld in that judgment, and the Committee of Creditors case had issue of COC decision to approve the resolution plan, but there were many issues, and as I said to begin with, kindly whenever you open the judgment, look for all issues involved. More than one issue would be involved in most of your judgments, and all issues are relevant for maybe citizen, for maybe institution, for maybe market, for somebody. So, or there would be definitely some legal question of law. So kindly go through that, all issues, and then look for that. So Swiss Ribbon, constitutionality of affirmed, and Committee of Creditors talk about the wisdom of COC, which is Committee of Creditors has the final say for the resolution plan. That is what was affirmed in that judgment. So go for these two. And SL Corp I have dealt, Competition Commission, etc. I think most of the areas of law I have seen, I have discussed. Now, if you have something, maybe I should look for your questions if you want me to answer something. Okay, so my colleague, Mr. Parmeshwar, has already said there is no negative marking. Yes, there is no negative marking. Thank you, Parmu, for that. I could not read all questions, so I could not answer. I'm continuously giving hints to the exam that you have to apply your mind and don't copy your case notes of open book. That's the biggest hint I have been giving, that use your own words and write. Don't waste your energy and ink while copying head notes. Read question paper carefully. Think of whatever more than one judgments it may be required to answer that question, and then write your answers. Then what are word limits would be written right in front of every question paper. If less mark, less word, more mark, more words, question could be mixed. So as in front of question papers or in beginning of the questions, you would have marks mentioned over there in addition to the writing of the word limit. Oh, I'm trying to read this. So I think we are done. I believe somebody is from registry is there to give me go ahead. Is there someone from your exam cell?
Yes, ma'am. You can wind up.
So, sir, you can now allow me, because from my side, I think I have covered everything, and
Okay, ma'am. Okay.
session. All other sessions had given exact pattern. What do we mean by pattern? I'm trying to understand the pattern means. Pattern and marking scheme, what does it mean? I don't know. If your exam cell can answer me that, clarify this, because I don't know what does it mean. I said that every question paper would have the word limit as well as the mark written in front of that. I also said that there would be some questions, like out of some you can solve some. I think more than that, what else I'm supposed to say, I don't know. Sir, should we conclude? Yes. So thank you everyone. It was good interacting all of you. I mean, not interacting. I wish we could interact in person, but then I tried to answer whatever I could see. And all the best for your exams. Do well, and do remember that don't copy anything from the head note and apply your mind. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for your valuable inputs.